12 brand new cars are sitting in Australian dealer yards right now that almost nobody is buying. And over the next half hour, I'm going to give you the real sales numbers on every one of them, the discounts already being thrown at them, and the single question you need to ask before you go anywhere near one of these so-called bargains. Not opinion. Registration figures, published prices, and the arithmetic underneath. Here's the part that makes it strange. This isn't happening in a flat market. Australians bought a monthly record 140,048 vehicles in June 2026, almost a quarter of them electric, and the Tesla Model Y outsold the Hilux and the Ranger in both May and June. For the first time in our history, China supplied more of our new cars than Japan did. 175,151 against 144,430. So the money is out there. Buyers are signing. These 12 cars are failing inside a boom, which is a much more embarrassing way to fail. I've spent enough years walking stock lines and reading dealer inventory sheets to pick an unwanted car without looking at the badge. Flat spots in the tyres, dust in the door shuts, a bill plate that's a year and a bit older than the sticker in the windscreen. That last one matters more than anything else in this video, and I'll get to why. 3 things to hang on to while we go. At number 8, there's a car where the manufacturer took more than $66,000 off the price, and the sedan version still only found 2 buyers in the entire country over 7 months. At number 5, the situation got so bad that the company importing the brand simply announced it was done, while the cars were still on the floor. And at number 10, we've got a vehicle that recorded 3 sales in a full calendar year. 3, not 300. Some of these cars are genuinely bad. Most of them aren't. That's the uncomfortable bit. Before the list, one thing has to be clear, because it explains nearly every car on it. A car does not end up rotting on a lot because it's rubbish. It ends up there because somebody made a decision in a boardroom on another continent about a market they don't live in. 2 forces are doing the damage. The first is our emissions rules. The new vehicle efficiency standard started on the 1st January 2025, with fines applying from 1st July that year to brands going over set carbon dioxide limits across their whole lineup. Go over and you cop a $50 liability for every gram of CO2 per kilometre above the limit, which you either pay or offset by buying credits from a cleaner brand. From 2026, the screws tightened hard. Any passenger car above 117 grams per kilometre and any light commercial above 180 now attracts a penalty. So brands need low-emission cars in the mix, not necessarily cars you ask for, cars that improve an average. The second force is simpler. Total volume for the first half of 2026 was effectively flat, down 0.3% to 606,793, which means everything BYD, Geely and Chery gained came straight out of somebody else's hide. That's the thread running through all 12 of these. A car designed for a market that existed when the plan was signed off, landing in the market we actually have, right? Number 12. Number 12 is the Nissan Ariya, and it's the cleanest example of the whole pattern. It launched here in September 2025. Nissan had actually delayed bringing it to Australia at all, and it was the emission standard that finally prompted the launch. A car imported because of a rule book. Then the market voted. Just 104 Arias were sold across the first 4 months of 2026, putting it at the bottom of the medium SUV segment in a class where the Model Y did 6,719 and the BYD Celion 7 was right behind on 6,248. Then it got worse. Nissan cut up to $12,500 off the Ariya 9 months after it hit showrooms, having shifted 39 examples in a record month for electric car deliveries. By July 2026, the base engage was $49,990 drive away in New South Wales, with another $20,500 for existing Nissan owners. Here's my honest read as somebody who's sat in one. There's nothing wrong with it. It's quiet, it's well put together, and Nissan's service network is one of the bigger ones going. It arrived late into the most brutally contested segment in the country and asked for premium money. That's it. That's the whole crime. By the way, whether you drive a Ute, a 4WD, or one of the newer Chinese cars hitting Australian roads, keeping it reliable comes down to what you do before the problems start. That's why I put together the 500,000 kilometre Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your vehicle last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot workshop upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera, or use the first pinned comment below. Which brings up a question worth holding. What happens when the car isn't late, isn't overpriced, and still doesn't move? That's number 11. Number 11 is the Subaru Solterra. Subaru owners are the most loyal buyers in this country. Genuinely, ask anyone who sells them, and they would not touch this thing. Across 2025, it was Subaru's slowest selling model by an enormous margin, 142 units, beaten even by its Toyota bZ4X twin on 797 against 17th 172 Model Ys. Subaru's response was a proper rework, not a sticker job. A facelift with a bigger 74.7 kWh CATL battery, a claimed 566 kilometers of range in the base all-wheel drive, and price cuts of up to $7,000. It helped a bit. There were 107 sold in April 2026 for a year-to-date of 478. Then in May, they cut again, the Solterra AWD down to 61,990, the Touring to 67,990, and the bigger Trail Seeker 4,000 cheaper at 63,990. 2 rounds of cuts inside 6 months tells you exactly how the stock was moving. And Subaru had a second reason to persist. It's sitting on about $7 million in emissions liabilities from the first 6 months alone. It needs to sell electric cars whether or not you want to buy one. Number 10 is where the numbers stop being disappointing and start being funny. This is the electric MG MIFA 9, the big people mover. In 2025, it sold 3 units in the whole country, worst of anything in its class, while newer arrivals like the Zeekr 009 actually found buyers. 3. You could shake hands with every owner in an afternoon and still be home for lunch. I'll be straight with you. I have never driven one, and I have no idea whether it's any good, because functionally nobody has been given the chance to find out. Small numbers like that are almost sweet. Number 9 isn't sweet at all, because it happened to a brand that was supposed to be the future. Number 9 is Cupra, and specifically the Formentor. Volkswagen's sporty Spanish offshoot arrived in 2022 with real ambition. The original plan called for 7,000 sales a year in Australia by 2025, a target set publicly by the brand's own global chief executive. It managed 1,111 in its first year, then 3,765 in 2023, and then went backwards. First half of 2026, 1,091 units, down 32.4%, the worst decline of any Volkswagen Group brand except Lamborghini. The Formentor is still its best seller, and it managed 352 examples in 6 months, down 61.3%. That's roughly 1 every 11 hours across the entire continent. What makes it sting is that the cars aren't the problem. The Formentor drives beautifully, and Cupra had fresh metal in the Tavascan and Terramar. It's a positioning problem. Priced above Volkswagen, badged as something Australians had never heard of, sold through a small network. If you're one of the people who bought one because you like driving and didn't care what the neighbors thought, good on you, honestly. You just picked a car whose resale value is now somebody else's problem to explain. Number 8 is the one I flagged at the start, and it's worth the wait. Mercedes-Benz's EQ lineup. Late in 2025, Mercedes-Benz Australia did something manufacturers hate doing in public. It slashed prices on cars already in stock by amounts that read like typos. The EQS 450 large sedan was offered at drive-away prices between $128,709 and $133,893, representing savings of as much as $66,405. The AMG EQE 53, a 460 kilo performance sedan, was listed around $130,350 to $142,239 drive-away, discounted by between roughly $65,000 and $70,000. Even the ordinary EQE 300 had nearly $24,000 taken off it. Now the payoff. To the end of July that year, Australia had registered 90 EQE sedans and 2 EQS sedans, with the SUV versions doing better at $594 and $22. 2. On a car where the discount alone was more than most people spend on an entire vehicle. The official framing was slower than expected demand for high-end electric models, and that's true as far as it goes. What it doesn't tell you is why the cars were built like that in the first place. I've read a lot of coverage, and I still haven't seen a straight answer on how that styling got signed off for a market that buys S-classes to look important in, so I'm not going to invent one for you. What I do know is that the platform underneath all four of these cars had its planned replacement cancelled, with insiders pointing to poor sales of the existing EQE, EQE SUV, EQS, and EQS SUV, saving the company billions in development. That's the verdict that matters. The engineers didn't get a second go. Four cars in, and you can see the shape of it now. Not one of these failed on quality. Every single one of them failed on the gap between where it was aimed and where we actually live. And in at least two cases, the car only came here to balance an emissions ledger. From here, it gets sharper because the next four aren't just slow sellers, they're cars whose parent companies have started backing out of the room. And I still owe you number 5, where the importer publicly gave up while the stock was still on the floor, and number 3, which is the single most discounted new car in the country nobody talks about. Number 7 is the Mazda large SUV range, and this one I want to spend a minute on because it's the most instructive failure on the list. Mazda used to own the family SUV conversation in this country. In its day, the CX-9 was doing around 500 sales a month. So Mazda built a whole new rear-drive biased platform and gave us 4 cars off it: CX-60, CX-70, CX-80, CX-90, with lovely 3.3-litre turbocharged straight sixes, petrol and diesel, plus plug-in hybrids, proper engineering, genuinely ambitious, and the CX-90, starting from a whisker under $69,000 before on-roads at the time, managed 61 sales in August 2025. The whole large range has been slow-moving in what's been a rough sales year for the brand. So in 2026, Mazda did the honest thing and cut. Prices came down across the CX-70 and CX-90 by between $3,700 and $8,051. The old $2,000 diesel premium was scrapped, so petrol and diesel now cost the same, and the plug-in hybrids came down to just $5,000 above the equivalent petrol or diesel. The CX-90 now opens around $74,883 drive away, and the CX-70 from $73,020 before on-roads. Here's the part nobody at Mazda enjoys reading out. The brand accrued $25,425,150 in emissions liabilities in the first 6 months of the scheme, an average of $661 for every vehicle it sold, on current trajectory that could stretch toward $51 million by 2029. Big capacity 6-cylinder engines are wonderful things, and I would take one over a 4-cylinder every day of my life, but they are exactly what that rulebook was written to punish. This is what a company caught between an excellent product and a spreadsheet looks like. Cars that are better than their sales figures, sitting in a yard, getting cheaper. That's a brand fighting to stay. Number 6 is a brand that already lost. Number 6 is Jeep. In the first half of 2026, Jeep sold 322 vehicles in Australia, down 69%. That's a nameplate people have tattooed on themselves, moving about 54 cars a month nationally. Grand Cherokee stock has almost entirely dried up, the Compass is dead here, and the dealer network is shrinking. For context on how far it's fallen, the Grand Cherokee was the brand's local bestseller in 2025 on 673 units, and it was the only Jeep going up. If you're standing in front of a discounted Jeep right now, the discount isn't the question. The question is who's servicing it in 2031, and whether the sensor you need is a fortnight away or a season away. There is a possible lifeline. The brand is expected to lean on Chinese partner Dongfeng for new models for Europe and the Asia Pacific. Maybe that works. I wouldn't buy a car on the strength of a maybe. Quick word, since you've stuck with me past the halfway mark, and we're down to the last 5. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, actual registration figures rather than press releases, subscribe, and the next one finds you on its own. Right? Because number 5 is where a car company stopped pretending, and it's the coldest thing on this list. Number 5 is Peugeot, and I mean the whole thing. Peugeot delivered 427 vehicles here in the first half of 2026, down 41%. Look inside that number. The best seller was the little partner van on 176, then the 3008 SUV on 92, down 30.3%. The redesigned 5008 was up 50% to 27 cars. And then the sentence that ends it, their importer, Inchcape, announced it was dropping the brand. That's not a slow month. That's the company whose name is on the paperwork deciding Australia isn't worth the freight. And here's what I want you to sit with. Somewhere in this country, there are Peugeots on a lot with a sign in the windscreen advertising a very attractive number. Those cars did not get worse when that announcement was made. The warranty is still a legal obligation, and your consumer guarantees don't evaporate because a distributor changes. Under Australian consumer law, you're entitled to a remedy for a major failure, regardless of what any brochure says. But the resale value, the parts pipeline, the dealer within an hour's drive, all of that just got a lot less certain, and the price on the windscreen was set before it happened. Number 4 is short because there isn't much to say. The Genesis GV60. Genesis's electric luxury SUV went from 191 sales in 2023 to 70 in 2024 to 15 in 2025. A 78.6% fall, an average of 1.25 a month. And the last one went out the door in October, with nothing at all in November or December. Meanwhile, a hotter performance version is scheduled to land here in 2026, a faster version of a car that sold 15. I don't have a joke that improves on that. Number 3 is the Volkswagen ID4 and ID5, and this is the one that sets up everything I'm about to tell you. Volkswagen took its time here and said so out loud. The launch was pushed back repeatedly, and the brand's marketing boss said plainly that they wanted a price position they wouldn't have to slash 2 months later. They also claimed 7,000 registrations of interest, so they landed it properly. The ID4 Pro at $59,990 before on-roads, the GTX at $69,990 or $72,990 drive away, with a WLTP range of 544 kilometers and genuinely good real-world efficiency. I've driven it. It's a solid car. Only 400-volt architecture, where Hyundai and Kia give you 800, so DC charging caps at 175 kilowatts and a 10 to 80% top-up takes about 28 minutes, but nothing there is a deal breaker. And then reality, rivals arriving from China, existing players sharpening prices, and the market swinging toward plug-in hybrids, which is how you end up with this, less than a year in. Volkswagen Australia advertising drive-away deals on model year 2025 ID5 Pro and GTX stock from $65,990 and $75,990. The price they promised not to slash, being slashed on cars built the year before. And the properly updated version isn't expected until early 2027. My read, and I'll flag it as a read rather than a fact, those MY25 cars are the ones that will be sitting under the brightest sign in the yard this spring, which is exactly where the trap is. So let's talk about the trap. This is the important part of the video, and if you skip the rest, don't skip this. You walk onto a lot. There's a car with $8, $10, $15,000 off. The sign says brand new, run out, plate clearance, never registered, delivery kilometers only, full warranty from the day you take it. Every word of that is true, and you are still about to be quietly relieved of several $1,000s. Because there are 2 dates on a car in this country, and only one of them is on the windscreen. The build plate carries a month and year, and that is the year a valuer uses to decide what your car is worth at trade-in time. A car built in November of one year is valued as that year's car even if you bought it and registered it the following February. The build date is what the car will always be valued by, for as long as you own it. 2 identical cars, one built in October and one in February, sold on the very same day, and one of them is permanently an older car. Sit with what that means. The discount isn't a gift. It's compensation for depreciation you haven't seen yet, and nobody at the desk is going to work out whether the compensation covers it. The honest way to put it, what's the benefit of saving $5,000 today if the trade-in costs you an extra $5,000 later? The discount on aging surplus stock has to be genuinely exceptional, or it bites you when you upgrade. Now the bit that makes me properly annoyed. It used to be that you could pop the bonnet and read the plate yourself. Since July 2021, compliance plates are no longer required on new vehicles. The details are recorded electronically instead, in a national database called the Register of Approved Vehicles. There are decent reasons for that. But the practical effect on you standing in a yard on a Saturday is that the one number capable of costing you thousands is no longer riveted where you can find it in 10 seconds. Nobody set out to hide it. Nobody had any reason to make sure you could see it either. And nobody at any point in that transaction is paid to bring it up. So don't wait to be told. Ask for the build month and year in writing before you talk about price. On the order form, next to the VIN. Then ask what the same car, one build year older, is fetching used right now. That's your real discount. Do the 2 numbers agree? Take the deal and take it with a smile, because some of these cars are extraordinary value. Do they disagree? Then what you're being offered isn't a bargain. It's an invitation to carry somebody else's stock problem home in your own name and to pay for the privilege in 3 years' time when you go to trade. The nice thing about that question is what it does to the room. A genuinely good deal survives it in about 4 seconds. Everything else changes the subject. Number two, and it's a small, sad one, the Fiat 500. Sales slipped from 527 in 2024 to 411 last year, and it's the only model in Fiat's local lineup. One car, one badge, 400 odd buyers, in a market that moves 1.2 million vehicles. I have a soft spot for it, and I'd tell you not to buy one purely as transport. Because a brand hanging on by a single nameplate is a brand with one board meeting between it and a farewell. Number one is the opposite kind of failure, the expensive kind. The Lotus Emea is the slowest selling car in Australia that you can genuinely walk in and order today, and it's a properly good thing. An electric super sedan built in China with the technology, comfort, and performance to worry a Porsche Taycan. The cheaper Emea 600 opens at $177,990 before on-road costs. And when Mercedes-AMG can't shift an excellent EQE 53 with something close to $100,000 knocked off it, you can see the shape of the problem. There is no amount of engineering that fixes being the 11th best answer to a question 60 people a year are asking. One honest caveat on this whole list, and it matters if you're going to argue with me in the comments. Counting new car sales in Australia is messier than it looks. The monthly figures come from the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries VFACTS report. But Tesla and Polestar report separately through the Electric Vehicle Council, so most totals you read are two data sets stitched together. Some brands report to neither. Toyota's own decline this year is quoted anywhere between about a fifth and a quarter, depending on which outlet you read, so I've taken the conservative end. And when a model changes generation or gets axed mid-year, its numbers stop meaning what you think they mean. Where a figure was soft, I've said so. Here's what I actually take from all of this. And it isn't about cars. A price is the only part of a new car that can't lie to you. Everything else in that showroom is a decision somebody made. The brochure, the badge, the launch, the panel of journalists flown somewhere warm. The price is what's left after all of that stops working. A $66,000 discount is not generosity, and it isn't a mistake. It's a company being forced in public to state what the car is genuinely worth to Australians, which is a very different number from what it was worth to the people who planned it. That's a skill worth having, and it transfers to nearly everything you'll ever buy. Not cynicism, reading, learning to look at a discount as information rather than a gift. Because a $15,000 saving on a car nobody wanted is the market telling you something true, and a $2,000 saving on a car with a 9-month waiting list is telling you something equally true in the other direction. Neither of them is a favor, both of them are data. So here's the procedure. Not a rule of thumb, something you can actually run. Step 1, get the build month and year in writing on the order form beside the VIN. Any hesitation is your answer. Step 2, look up what the same model, one build year older, is currently advertised for used by a dealer. That's your depreciation, roughly, and it's the number the discount has to beat. Step 3, check the model's monthly volume, not the brand's. A brand can be healthy while a model is dying, and it's the model that determines whether the panel you need exists in 3 years. Step 4, find out whether a replacement or facelift is landing within 12 months. If it is, the way the updated ID4 isn't expected until early 2027, you're buying the outgoing car and every future buyer will know it. Step 5, get a written trade-in valuation on the actual car, actual build year, before you sign anything. Not on the model, on that car. Step 6, and only if the first 5 pass, negotiate. Now you're negotiating with information, which is a completely different conversation from negotiating with enthusiasm. Worth knowing what you're walking into on the used side too, because it's shifted. Used sales in the first half of 2026 came in at 1,300,000 at 18, down 6.6%, and by June the monthly decline had widened to 16.2%, with stock building, cars taking longer to sell, and sellers discounting harder to compete. That cuts both ways. Your trade-in is worth less than you hope. The used alternative to that discounted new car is also cheaper than it was. Here's something to do tonight, and it takes about 20 minutes. Pick any 3 cars off this list. Search them new, sort by lowest price, and look at the build dates in the listings. Then search the same models used, 1 year older, and look at what dealers are asking. By the time you've finished your cup of tea, you'll know precisely which of those advertised savings is real and which one is a transfer of somebody else's inventory problem onto your bank account. You'll never look at a run out sign the same way again, and that's a permanent upgrade for 20 minutes work. Now, tell me where you're watching from and what's been sitting in your local yard too long. I mean it. This is the one thing I can't research from here. A car that's poison in Sydney can be entirely sensible in Kalgoorlie, and a slow seller in a capital city can be the only thing anyone drives 300 kilometres inland. Country, town, whatever's parked out the front of your nearest dealer with dust on the bonnet and a sign in the windscreen. If it's one of these 12, say which one and what they're asking. And if you disagree with the order, give me a second question. Which of these 12 would you actually take at what discount? Because a couple of them are genuinely good cars being sold at a genuinely stupid price, and I'd rather see someone here get one of those than watch it go to auction. I read the replies. It's the most useful research I get, and it's the reason a few of the numbers in this video are as specific as they are. There's a thread I deliberately didn't pull here, and it's been bothering me for a while. What happens to these cars at 3 years old? The residual values, who's carrying the loss, and whether the people quietly making money out of that are the same people who set the discount in the first place. I don't have that fully worked out yet. When I do, you'll hear it. Subscribing is how it reaches you. Until then, get the build date in writing. Everything else is negotiable.